All right, guys, welcome back to the Atheniano Show, where each episode is a new ripple containing unknown but limited impact. I'm here with Tristan Sollecito to do part two of the top five movies and TV shows. And on part one, which you can find here or in the episode list, um, we discussed top five movies. But right now, we are going to get to top five TV shows. And Tristan, if there was any doubt about either of our commitments to this, I think the hours at which we're doing this answer all those questions, wouldn't you say?
I certainly would.
Yeah. For those of you who
Things
don't
are-
know, it's 5 in the morning my time, and it's midnight for Tristan. So we are fully committed to bringing you the content as soon as possible, and whenever we can. So
certainly.
before we get to the top five TV quotes, Tristan, I wanted to briefly mention because I thought about this right after we did the movies.
Okay.
And
Hit me.
I don't know if you realize this, but both of our number one movie quotes
Mhm.
had to do with the like the crystallization of memory, I would say, and like thought. Like essentially the realness of things in your mind.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. And I'm trying because a lot of my quotes, I mean, I think understandably so, have some pretty common threads, common themes. I'm trying to distinguish between them. But yeah, I think we had a good mix in part one for sure. And I think it's difficult to find five quotes that are completely, especially of your own favorites, right? Obviously, there are going to be some common themes, but I think we had a good mix. I think it was a good, diverse, eclectic mix of quotes. So I think, yeah, I'm excited for this one because I told you this earlier, but my movie one came a little more naturally, I think. But in looking back in retrospect, I'm excited for this one. I think my list is I'm liking it. I'm not going to
Yeah.
necessarily put it ahead of the movie ones definitively for now, but I'm excited. I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to go first this time because you went first for the movies. So I will take the pleasure. And so this my number five quote is from a TV show, a recent TV show called Ted Lasso. And for those of you who don't know, Ted
Very
Lasso
interesting.
is about an American football coach, American football, who gets hired kind of as a joke to coach an English soccer or football team. And he doesn't really know what he's doing in the beginning, but he takes the job and he's kind of like a beloved, sweetheart figure in the town. People grow to love him, and he's known for like his sayings and whatnot. So this quote occurs after a really tough loss in the middle of a hard stretch for the team, and so he gives this speech in the middle of that. So I will play that and then talk about the quote. Quality is not great in this clip, but we'll make do.
No worries.
Okay. Mm-mm. It's loading. Here we go. You can see it.
I can see it. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. No, you gotta give it up for Zellweger. Look, point is, fellas, if all those attractive people with their amazing apartments and interesting jobs, usually in some creative field, can go through some light-hearted struggles and still end up happy, then so can we. Jennifer Lopez. That's a great call, Danny, and not at all beat too late. Gentlemen, believing in Ron communism is all about believing that everything's gonna work out in the end. Now, these next few months might be tricky, but that's just because we're going through our dark forest. Fairy tales do not start, nor do they end in the dark forest. That son of a gun always shows up smack dab in the middle of the story. But it will all work out. Now, it may not work out how you think it will, or how you hope it does, but believe me, it will all work out. Exactly as it's supposed to. Our job is to have zero expectations and just let go.
All right. So there was a couple in there, but the one that I picked out was it may not work out how you think it will or how you hope it does, but believe me, it will all work out exactly as it's supposed to. And I really like this quote because, you know, working out does not necessarily just entail things happening according to your ambitions or hopes. Um, and I think this is something that both of us that I talk to you a lot about is like oftentimes I want to be very much uh, in control of what's happening in the future and very much dictating the way things are going to go. And uh, when it doesn't go that way, it's incredibly frustrating, and it's very easy to lose hope and um, give up. But I think, and it's something that I struggle with. But I think it's very important to remember that even though things may not work out the way you hope it will, and or the ways you want, and in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, etc., if you stay the course and stay along for the ride, things will work out in some way or another. And ultimately, that working out will be, for the best.
Yeah, it's well. First of all, this is a show that I have not seen but have been meaning to. I actually was about to start watching it with my parents, and we ended up opting for a different show that will be featured on my list. But um, yeah, it's I think what struck me is kind of his attitude more so than the content of the speech itself. It was a very upbeat. I would not have gotten the sense if I didn't know the context that they had just lost or had endured any sort of negative experience. And what's funny is I'm gonna have to paraphrase. I think no, not even. I think the last line of the quote was the one that I thought you were going for, which was our job is to have no expectations, which isn't necessarily something that I wholeheartedly agree with, but I personally am not a very goal oriented person. I tend to feel like if I have a goal, if I don't meet it, it's just going to lead to disappointment. And if I do meet it, I'm sort of limiting myself and constricting myself and maybe subconsciously not going to be motivated to pursue anything further once the goal is achieved. So I don't really see a lot of sense, me personally, in setting goals. I kind of just go for maximum potential and try as hard as I can to be as good as I can at whatever I'm doing, and not really defining it by certain benchmarks or checkpoints. So it's interesting. I think there was a lot going on there, a lot to unpack, and yeah, it reminds me also a little bit of my number three from the movie quotes about hope, hope versus fear, and
Mm.
obviously in the context of sports. I mean, both of us have played countless sports growing up and over the course of our lives, team sports in particular. So that's definitely relatable, I think, for anybody who's been a part of any sort of a unit, whether it be sports or otherwise, that kind of not only understanding that everything's going to work out on an individual level, but I think that's even more true when you have a team or group of people in whatever facet we're talking about, supporting you every step of the way. So, and obviously, who better to lay that out there than a coach or a leader of some sort? Obviously, Ted Lasso, like I said, I don't know the series in depth, but I think that it's a very um, I think it's a very important scene for anybody who is participates in sports, or like I said, a team dynamic of any kind, especially as a leader, somebody in that role, in that position. So yeah,
Yeah. And even anybody just
cool.
struggling. I mean, I think it's important to remember that, if you're constantly failing to meet your goal or your expectations, that doesn't mean that all is lost and that it's not going to work out. Working out has a ton of different um, ends, and you don't know which one it is until it does. Um, and I think
Right.
it's important to remember that and keep an open mind when you're going through the course of a journey, um, or on track to reach a certain goal or achieve something.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so, so yeah, Tristan, I think I did my five. Now I think it's your turn to give your numero cinco.
All right. So my clip is from Game of Thrones. It's a long series that is packed full of, I think, a lot of very, very big time and juicy quotes. I knew when you told me, or when you assigned me this task, that there would be something in there that I could definitely pull out of it. So without further ado, I mean, we can play the clip. This is from Jon Snow. Um, Probably, I would venture to say a lot of people's favorite, if not one of their favorite characters from the show. I don't purport to be an expert on the show, but um, I did watch it once, so I'd like to maybe dive deeper at some point. But without further ado, go ahead.
All right.
I'm pleased you bent the knee to our queen. I would have advised it, had you asked. But have you ever considered learning how to lie every now and then? Just a bit?
I'm not going to swear an oath I can't uphold. Talk about my father if you want. Tell me that's the attitude that got him killed. But when enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything. Then there are no more answers, only better and better lies. And lies won't help us in this fight.
That is...
So the quote I'm going for is when there are, I have to paraphrase actually, but when, what was it? I can't even remember. Apologize. I want to get this right, so let me lock this in. But yeah, I mean, okay. So first of all, look, I feel like there's this sort of obvious or subliminal. Let me just quote it. When enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything. And I kind of feel like in life, or in society, I should say, there's this almost sort of understood and subliminal phenomenon where a lot of people, I think, feel very empowered when they see things cynically and in a negative light. I almost feel like a lot of people feel like growing up and maturing is understanding that honor and doing what's right is not always the best option. And I feel very much opposed to that concept. I think that maturing is realizing the exact opposite, that lying, falsehoods, wrongdoings obviously can advance you or others in the short term. But I think growing up and wisdom is understanding that in the long run, that will not be the case. So Jon Snow, I mean, if you know the show, his character is embodies that quote, or that quote embodies him, I should say, thoroughly. Um, and obviously, I think it's pretty well laid out there. It's not too deep of a quote in the sense that there's a lot to unpack. I think it's pretty crystal clear. But yeah, I operate as somebody who tells the truth. I mean, you can, I guess, choose not to believe this, but every moment of every day, I don't feel like there's ever an appropriate time that I've experienced to lie or to withhold the truth, even. And maybe with a couple exceptions, but I wouldn't even necessarily say so for sure. And I think that this quote like I said, is pretty clear. But I think it's very important to understand that while I think a lot of people would hear that and say, well, that might not necessarily be the case. I don't think it's naive to say that it is. And I think it frustrates me sometimes when people, I think, feel like they're, you know, ahead of the game if they understand that lying and manipulating people is going to get them ahead in life. And I think real true wisdom and maturity is understanding that that advancement is temporary, and in the long run, it's certainly not something that is going to benefit you on an individual level, and certainly not benefit those around you.
I I right before I went to bed last night. I don't know where I saw this, but I saw a really interesting quote. Um, and I think it was lies get up and runs around the world in the time that truth puts on his shoes.
I love that.
Um, and I think it's true, right? It's very easy to lie and manipulate uh, the truth and your wording, and that spreads and runs like wildfires, right? That goes so quickly, and it's so easy to do that. But the hard thing to do, and the steady thing to do, is to tell the truth. You know, and I think, well, I was gonna say it's a very Kantian esque idea because he's always like, at any point in time, you should always do the right thing, no matter what the situation is. Um, and like one of his
Yeah,
universal things is telling the truth, and so I think it is. You know, it's really important to remember that the consequences of you lying or not telling the truth may seem trivial um, in the moment, but in reality, you're starting an infectious disease that is going to have much greater consequences in the long term than it is in than you are gaining by lying in that single moment. And it could be an infectious disease in two senses. One, because for yourself, right? I think once you start lying and get in the habit of not telling the truth, then it becomes very easy in the future for you, anytime the truth becomes inconvenient, for you to
right.
just throw it away, right?
A
And so it almost like the lie infects you. But at the same time, I think from a societal point of view, one person's lie, as we said, runs around the world, but by the time truth puts on his shoes, like your you may not think that your lie has an impact on other people because you're just one person, but I think it really does. When other people start doing wrongs, it really influences uh, the the willingness of others to do the same wrong.
Mm,
Whereas if you take the high road and stick to the truths, um, I think you're setting a much better example for yourself and for others in society.
100%. And not just that. I mean, you dig yourself a deeper and deeper hole, and it's in many cases it's hard to go back on a lie, right? You almost have to start believing it yourself, um, and build upon it, right? If you tell a lie that starts to color the future, it's really hard to reverse that. And I always say it's really really difficult to get yourself into trouble if you're always telling the truth. I mean, 90%, I think, of issues at a minimum arise from dishonesty. And I think I think this is very important, and this is something that I live by 100%. If you believe that you're a fully moral and ethical person, which I would hope and think that most people do, and that certainly isn't necessarily the case, but I would hope that for as many people as possible it is. If you believe that about yourself, then you should never say something that you don't believe.
Yeah.
Because if you do, that's the only way you're going to say something that is immoral, according to you. And you might be wrong, right? You can make a mistake, but I would like to think that there are people around you that can help you and help you correct that and teach you, right? But for example, I believe that everything that I believe is right and moral. And it's probably the case that it's not, although maybe not. I think it may potentially might be because I'm just that guy. But if I believe, why would I ever say something that I don't think is true? If that makes sense. And I think that's a very and again, like I said, this frustrates me. Like I think a lot of people are like, well, yeah, but in reality, this isn't the case. But I think real maturity is understanding that it is. It just doesn't necessarily feel that way immediately.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
And this is actually a fantastic segue. If you excuse me for a moment, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt. To my third quote on this list. So we'll get there when we get there.
Well,
But
it's an even better
pardon me.
segue to my number 4 on this list.
Well, that is absolutely sublime.
And I don't think I need an introduction here. You will find out why. This is a quote from the one and only Seinfeld.
Oh, fantastic.
And I think I don't need to tell you which quote it is here, or any context.
So, George, how do I beat this lie detector?
I'm sorry, Jerry, I can't help you.
Come on, you got the gift. You're the only one that can help me.
Jerry, I can't. It's like saying to Pavarotti, teach me to sing like you.
All right, well, I gotta go take this test. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Jerry, just remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
That wasn't even segue than I even thought. Wow. Okay. What
Yeah.
you got?
I was looking at my list, and in the middle of a talk, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like, this is the perfect segue."
Yeah, I really hope this one's next, right?
So just a little bit of context. Jerry, so there's George and Jerry. George is the one who's the bald guy. Jerry's not. Jerry's girlfriend works at the police station and has caught him in a lie, and she's making him take the lie detector test, to the polygraph test, to prove that he's lying. And George has beaten this polygraph test. He's like done it in the past, and so Jerry's like, "Please, please, please, tell me your secret. How do you do this?" And George's like, "Oh, I can't do it. I can't help you. I can't help you. It's it's a God given gift. I can't teach you." And then at the end, he delivers like a great line. I just love this. It's not a lie if you believe it. And I think okay, this is going to be completely contrarian to everything I just said in the previous about your number 5. But I think it's often, like, especially in today's world, when there's so much going around and there's so much information, and oftentimes, like, you could go to one news outlet and get a story, and then you could go to another news outlet and the same story could be twisted in a completely different way, so that you could get a completely different set of facts from one one outlet to the next. And, you know, I don't think it's the truth, but I'm not so certain that it is a lie. Because if you don't know, okay, if you, there's one case, right? If you don't know the other side, or don't know um, other things about a certain case, and you're just saying based on the information that you have, you could be telling a falsehood, but I don't know if that necessarily means it's a lie. Now,
Right.
on the other hand, and I think this is what this quote gets to more, is if you somehow manipulate your mind to just like subconsciously get rid of certain facts and certain truths, um, it's almost like you're operating as if you never had that information. And
Right.
then, so in some sense, like, is that really a lie? Or can you manipulate your psychological state so that you purposely erase certain information from your brain, uh, and convince yourself that what you're saying is true, um, on a psychological level. And then when you say that falsehood, I'm not certain that that is the same thing as telling an outward lie when you actively know and believe something, but purposely say the opposite. And so I think it is like it does this quote. It's first of all, it's very funny, and for those of you who know Seinfeld, it's perfectly in line with the character George Costanza. Um, but it also has some philosophical underpinnings about what is a lie and what is not, and what it means to tell the truth. Because some things are like subjective, right? For example, saying your favorite ice cream flavor or your favorite color, right? There is no objective truth necessarily out there that somebody can say, well, actually, no, it's, I know you're saying it's blue, but it's pink, because there is no way for anybody to objectively figure out that information. Um, so to me, it does say something very interesting about uh, the ability for you to turn objectivity into subjectivity. And I think that's really what this quote gets at, is turning the objective into the subjective in your mind. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what's interesting. Well, first of all, I think we all hear that, and we hear it as comedy because, and it is, it's very funny. But I think we hear it as such because it's not true. But I don't think that's the case. I think what George says is actually true. The problem is we're not really in control of what we believe. And I would love to have this debate with you sometimes if you disagree. I don't know if you do, but I always like to think, and I've had this argument and debate many, many times. I don't think we're in control of what we believe at the core. We are in control of what we do with that information and the choices that we make, what we say, what we do. But the answer to George's point is not that that's incorrect. The answer is we don't really get to decide whether or not we believe it. If Jerry did lie, he knows that. And he can potentially manipulate his mind and inauthentically feel otherwise. But at the core, I don't think we as humans are in control of what we believe. And, obviously um, there's a lot of semantics that go along with that. And we could, obviously debate them at another time. But I think what George is saying is factually correct. So I like that quote. It's first of all Seinfeld. I probably could have pulled 10 quotes out of there out of
Oh yeah,
Seinfeld, but
100%.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And it was
And
a
I think
perfect
it's
segue.
hilarious how. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead. You're saying it's hilarious that.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was hilarious how fitting it was after my number 5.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, yeah. That was fate doing a number on this segment. So yeah, Tristan. Before we get to number 5, make sure, guys, hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you are listening/watching. It's very easy, and it brings me and Tristan a great amount of joy, right, Tristan?
Okay. 100%. Whatever negative impact it may or may not have on you, I can assure you, pales in comparison to the positive impact that it has on us. And
Yeah,
thus, you would be making the world a better place by hitting that subscribe button
yeah,
because the net influence on the world's happiness will be positive. I would argue that the negative impact on yourself is nothing because will become more readily accessible to the Athenianos show, which is certainly something that is going to benefit you tremendously. So I apologize. Continue.
No, I was just gonna say, and also, as you know from the first episode, and what we're gonna talk about at the end, you should also subscribe to Tristan's Tee It Up
Oh, you
Golf
should.
if you've liked uh his performance, and I'm sure you have because it's been impeccable, and interesting and fascinating. So yeah, make sure you do that after you're done watching. So, and
Right.
we'll talk about that more at the end.
100%.
So yes,
First, subscribe here. That's
first subscribe
first and
here.
foremost.
Yeah. All right, Tristan, what are
Yes.
we looking at for number 4?
Here's what we got, and I think, look, this was inevitable. This was going to happen regardless. Um, this next quote is from possibly the greatest television show ever created, SpongeBob SquarePants. And before you say anything, and yes, it's SpongeBob. I don't want to get too deep on SpongeBob. I don't want to overdo it, with the analysis. But in my personal opinion, a top 5 show of all time. And just play the clip without further ado. This is one of those I can't even really put a quote on it because the whole speech is just absolutely sensational from
All
Mr.
right, I'm ready.
SquarePants. Without further ado,
So thanks. Thanks for nothing.
You're welcome.
What kind of monsters are we? That poor creature came to us in his hour of need, and we failed him. Squidward's always been there for us when it was convenient for him. Evelyn, when your little Jimmy was trapped in a fire, who rescued him?
A fireman?
And Larry, when your heart gave out from all those tanning pills, who revived you?
Some guy in an ambulance.
Right! So if we all could just pretend that Squidward was a fireman or some guy in an ambulance, then I'm sure we could all pull together and discover what it truly means to be in a marching band.
Oh man, SpongeBob SquarePants, ladies and gentlemen.
So I love this, and what's funny is I I kind of knew this was going to be on my list before I even realized why and what I would say about it from a meaningful standpoint. But to be honest, and I'm not making this up, this is it's something that really strikes me because I think what we realize and learn about SpongeBob, which I think is consistent with his character throughout the show, is that he's always looking to help people regardless of what they can do for him. And I think this is very, very impactful and meaningful because I think a lot of people are under the delusion that you're supposed to help people because you're going to in turn gain something from it, right? And I love this because it's not the case, right? I think that there are a lot of moments in life where even subconsciously, right, not even necessarily manipulatively, if that's a word, But I think subconsciously, a lot of times we make choices to help people because we know that it's going to circle back to us. And while I think that's probably true, that should not be, in my personal opinion, the mindset or the motivation to do so. I think we
Mm.
should all be striving to help people because we genuinely want to help them. And obviously, I'm a religious person, and I'm paraphrasing here, but to me personally, it's God, it's everyone else, and then it's me. In order of whom I'm trying to please and whom I'm trying to look out for. So, um, I think a lot of people certainly might disagree, and I think a lot of people think that everything you do for yourself, which I don't even necessarily disagree with. I think helping people does in turn help yourself, but I don't think um, psychologically that should be the path to doing things for others. So I think that the reward in and of itself, the reward of making somebody's life better, to me should come before anything that's going to circle back to you personally. So
Well, I have a slightly different list. For me, it's God, family,
yeah, you know what? I
me.
excuse me. I absolutely
And by the way, you're included in that family.
I appreciate that. You as well. While I was saying it, that thought actually popped into my head, but I had a good flow going there, so I didn't want to interrupt myself.
Yeah,
But
yeah, no
100%,
problem.
it's God, it's family, it's everyone else, and then
Yeah,
myself. So
yeah.
Jesus obviously
Um,
being included in God
but
personally.
what I love about this SpongeBob clip is he doesn't say, he's not saying like, imagine, think about all the things Squidward has done to help you, and therefore you should help him, right? He says,
Right.
imagine Squidward is, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but like the ER doctor. Imagine he's the fireman. Imagine he's this. Um, so it's not necessarily that like Squidward has done all these things to help you, and therefore you should help him. It's kind of like everybody has the potential
Right.
to help
For sure.
and to be
Absolutely.
helpful to you. And so in this same way, like Squidward could, he could be the fireman. He could be, um, the ER doctor. And so therefore he has the potential. Everybody has the potential to help. And so you should
Yeah.
always, even if, like you said, you don't want to operate on the way that like just because somebody did something for you, therefore you should help them. I think it can be helpful to think about, okay, everybody has the potential to help you and
Right.
to give something to you. And so, therefore, you should always be helpful and give something to them. Because, like SpongeBob insinuates, Squidward could be the fireman, or he could be the doctor, uh, or he could help you in another way that you're not expecting. So it's I always operate on a way like you never know, when that person that you're passing by or giving a hand to or helping could be, you know, um, the next shining light in your
Mhm.
life.
Right.
uh, or even you never know what your interaction. This the show is all about like amplifying that ripple effect, right? That you have towards other people and uh, focusing on how individuals can, by themselves, have impacts wide and far. And I think, SpongeBob hits on this where like you never know at any given time what your actions of helping somebody else, what they could mean to another person, right? To you, it may be a trivial thing, just, helping somebody, however small it is. but to them, you never know how great of an impact. Maybe that person is really going through something
Yeah.
and nobody's willing to help them and they think they're all alone. And just the act of you reaching out your hand could turn their life around in ways that you never could have expected. And so to me, that unexpected, both on the standpoint of the other person's capacity to give back to you and help you, and also from the standpoint of the unexpected impact that you could have on somebody else, to me
Right.
mandates that you operate on the basis of helping somebody, not because they've helped you, but because of potential.
Absolutely. I think that's a very astute point. I think, yeah, I think, right. It reminds us that if you can do it for somebody who's done something for you, like you said, that means you could do it for somebody who hasn't. You just don't necessarily feel like it. And I always operate under the same presumption, right? And I think even, not necessarily correctly sometimes, but yeah, somebody cuts you off on the roads, right? Somebody bumps into you because they're rushing to get somewhere, right? It's like, obviously, a 99% of the time it's because that person is inconsiderate. But on the off chance that it's that 1% where they're rushing to get to the hospital or they're rushing to do whatever they got to do, obviously we don't know. And I think that we have to make that presumption just in case, because if we're in a situation of danger or strife or imminent anything, right? We would hope that others are understanding of that, even if they don't know what's going on. And I think a lot of times, more often than we understand, that's the case. And I
Mm.
love the line also where he says, Squidward's always been there for us when it was convenient for him. I thought that was hilarious. But even more so, it's just seeing the positive in every little thing that a person
Yeah.
does, right? I've never met a human being who didn't have a positive quality or some positive impact on my life. So I think highlighting that over, some potential negatives is very powerful.
Yeah. Tristan, before we get into my number three, I'm just going to take 2 seconds to close my blinds because I think the sun is coming out and it's causing some reflection on the camera. So,
Absolutely.
if you excuse me, I'm just going to close the blind for 2
You're
seconds.
excused. Lovely.
Nice blinds, right?
They are. They really are.
Yeah.
They pop. Sure.
Pop. All right. All right. So, number three. All right. So my number three is a little bit cheating. Um, and the reason why it's cheating is because it's from a show about the Gospels. But I made sure it's not a
Little
direct.
little.
It's not a direct quote
Okay.
from any of the books.
Gotcha.
So it's in the spirit of Jesus, but it's not a direct quote. So that's
Okay.
why I thought it
Thank
was
you.
okay.
Sure.
So I'll just give some context for the scene. He just gave the Sermon on the Mount, and he's returning home to Nazareth. And I think it's no secret that he in the Bible he's not received well in Nazareth. But this is kind of right at the point where people of Nazareth turn on him. And so he's asked to give the sermon at their local synagogue. And so he's in the middle of giving the sermon, and this is kind of at the point where the people turn on him and chastise him, but also the point where he announces to them that he is the Messiah, the Son of God. And so they don't take it well, and they don't take what he says well, but you will see why they don't take what he says well. So I will play the clip. And this is from The Chosen, by the way.
And Naaman. There were many lepers in Israel during this time. None of them were cleansed, except Naaman. Only a Gentile, a Syrian soldier, an enemy of the Lord's people. But he was so desperate, he trusted Elisha, and his leprosy was cleansed. You may be the chosen seed of Abraham. You may be the people of the covenants, but that will not bring you my salvation. If you cannot accept that you are spiritually poor and captive, in the same way that a Gentile woman and a Syrian leper recognize their need, if you do not realize that you need a year of the Lord's favor, then I cannot save you. Who do you think you are?
This is what Hannah talked about. That he even called himself the Messiah.
Are you claiming to be the Messiah? Or are you merely claiming to speak for the Lord as a prophet?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And there's a lot of that whole scene is great, and I couldn't play the whole scene because it's 12 minutes long. But I highly recommend that you go out there and watch it. It's on YouTube, and also the entire series. It's 3 seasons, but they're coming out with the 4th soon. It's completely crowdfunded, so the whole thing is free and to watch for anybody. And it's online. Just type in The Chosen, watch, and it's easy to watch on free. Online, sorry. And so the part that I picked out there is, if you do not realize that you need a year of the Lord's favor, then I cannot save you. And I think that's a really powerful and important message, which is, because the line right before that is, you may be the chosen seed of Abraham, you may be, the chosen one, but if you cannot realize that you are spiritually poor, the same way that, a Gentile, which, so essentially, there was believed to be like, the Jews who at that time were considered the chosen ones, and then the Gentiles who were not followers of the Lord and not descendants of Abraham, and so they were thought to be, I guess, lesser people than Jews. And he's saying to them, you will not be saved by the Messiah, by me, if you do not realize that in the same way that people who are not the chosen one, who are supposed to be lesser than you, realize that they need me, they need spiritual cleansing, that you too have flaws and need improving, then you can't be saved. Then I can't save you. And I think it really speaks to our need to, in whatever position you may think you are, and whatever high ground you may have in any moral situation or in any situation, if you don't recognize that you too have flaws in whatever capacity, both I think this can apply both from a material standpoint, but also from a from a spiritual standpoint, uh, more directly. If you don't realize that you too have flaws and need spiritual help, then you cannot be saved. And you cannot reach, the ultimate, um, the ultimate, I guess, I don't know, prosperity or good or salvation is the better word.
Right.
If you don't realize first that you need it. And I
Right.
think that's very pertinent in a lot of um, in our world today, where a lot of people kind of have this, think they need to portray themselves as perfect and having no flaws and try to maintain this image or this aura of perfection or flawlessness. And I think it's important to realize that recognizing your flaws and your weaknesses and your shortcomings is actually in many ways a strength and what gives you more power than not recognizing them.
For sure. I'm so happy that you singled that one out because honestly, while I was watching it, I missed like the first part of that line, and I was like, "Oh, I need to hear that again." And I was actually going to ask you to recite it for me, and it just so happened to be the one that you singled out. First of all, I haven't seen the Chosen, but I'm really excited to, and I think Jonathan Rumi. I mean, I've seen clips, but I think Jonathan Rumi does a really incredible job of one of the most difficult characters I think to play in the history of film. But yeah, and I don't know if you know off the top of your head if there's a Bible verse that's pulled from or paraphrased from, but I would love to look into that. Yeah. No, 100%. I think it's very awakening. It's very pertinent, it's very important, and I think it's something that there's this kind of, and I've been thinking about this a little bit too. Like as a Christian, um, I sometimes I struggle to find the balance between trusting myself and my ability to make the right choices and be the right person and be the person that I want to be and that God wants me to be and Jesus wants me to be, and also having that self awareness and having that self criticism and understanding when to look to change, right? Because I think there is a balance, right? I don't think that God wants us to be so hard on ourselves, and not even necessarily hard on ourselves, but doubting ourselves. Right? I think He wants us to make our choices with confidence, and I think a lot of times it's difficult to find that balance between confidence in our choices and making sure they're the right ones. So I think it's a really good line, really good scene to sort of enlighten us there a little bit. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Mm. Yeah, that is something that I too struggle with, and I think it's actually, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think it's a good segue into my second quote. But I think we should go to your third first.
Sure.
So tell me what we're going to be.
Yeah. So
looking for.
Definitely a different vibe here than The Chosen. This quote is from The Office. It's a famous quote from The Office. I'm sure many of you have seen it. I'm sure many of you haven't. But yeah, play the clip. It's a short clip. There's not a lot of context to it. It's basically just the quote. But it's a banger. It's a good one. So let it rip.
All right.
Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
So yeah, fairly self-explanatory, but there's a lot to unpack here. I think that and this kind of, like I said, ties into my number 5, and I didn't really realize this at first, but I think again, it's one of those situations where a lot of people feel that it's almost I don't know, based, right? I don't use that word a lot, but based or mature um or I'm trying to think of a better word for it. But wise to think that fear to it's better to be feared than loved, because again, I think it ties into that quote, that beautiful quote that you shared with us about the truth, right? I would say in the short term, a lot of times it is better to be feared, but I think that what's interesting is I think people think of that quote, and there's a dichotomy between fear, which equals power, and love, which equals fondness, kindness, right? But to me, when I heard that quote, it kind of made me realize there's a lot more power in love than there is in fear, and I think that that doesn't always necessarily transpire in our day-to-day lives because there are deadlines, right? There are time frames. Like I think of politics, for example, right? It's like, well, if you had to go with, one of those two options, if you had to be seen as a powerful figure or a loving figure, and there's going to be an election where there's, going to be a vote that's taking place, I don't think you necessarily have a lot of time or enough time to build up a brand of somebody who is going to make the country or the whatever community better through love. I think fear, like you said, is a lot more immediate, and so I think that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to build a brand of love that is, one that's gonna win a lot of votes. But I think that certainly, like I said, similarly to the truth, right? I think love is something that takes shape and takes form over an extended period of time. And I think over that extended period of time, I think there's a lot more power that comes from that, right? I'm a very big believer in, you get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. And it actually reminds me of our good friend Paulie Sobes. I remember he made a very astute point. I think it was in 8th grade. And he said something to the effect of, I'm a lot more motivated to do my work for teachers that I like than teachers that I don't, and I think that it's that on the surface, like I disagreed with that right away. And once I thought about it, I was like, yeah, that's probably true, right? Teachers can instill fear in us, right? They can instill that power, right? That makes us do our homework in the immediate, but to do it with purpose and with meaning, and to do it in a way that's going to educate us, I think I'm way more motivated to do that for a teacher that I'm more fond of, and does it in a loving and supportive way. So, yeah, it could get the task done in the short term, like I said, but to build something important, to build something really meaningful, I think love is a lot more powerful and a lot more impactful than.
Well, it's definitely very Machiavellian. You're that's the famous line from his, it's better to be feared than loved. And I think he ultimately concludes that it's both.
Yeah.
And that was the answer in this quote, and it is a really like it's much harder, I would say, to obtain love than it is to obtain fear. Fear can be manifested in a number of ways, and through a number of means. But to be loved is something that you really have to work at, and it takes time and effort, and it also takes effort to maintain it, and to keep it up.
Oh yeah. And not just that, but you don't necessarily, oh, pardon me. You don't necessarily see the benefits immediately or see them at all necessarily.
No.
even if they are there.
I think I don't know if anybody said this, but this is a quote that I'm gonna call my own that I've just thought of in the moment.
Oh
But
boy.
if you want to form a state, um, or a dictatorship, then maybe fear is sufficient. But if you want a covenant, you must lead with love.
I think George Washington said that once.
Did he?
No, I have no idea. That was a joke.
um, yeah, I mean, I think this is something that you could talk about, and you know, it would be great to have the debate with somebody who thinks the other way, who thinks that fear is more important.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure, for sure.
but yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and I think it's one that will stay relevant for a very, very, very long time.
Oh, 100%. And I think it actually ties a little bit into my number 3 from the movies, the fear versus hope. I think fear and love are two emotions that are undeniably powerful, and so I think the dichotomy is one that almost everybody, if not everybody, would have an opinion on, and a strong opinion at that. So,
All right.
but both is potentially a reasonable answer.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. So my number 2 comes from a animated series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and this is a quote from the character Uncle Iroh, who's who's supplying wisdom to his nephew Zuko, and Zuko's this young guy who wants to be, the man, and he's struggling with some mental emotions and feelings. So yeah, I'll play the clip. It's pretty self-explanatory, and we can talk about it after. So, without further ado, it's a short clip. Here's my number 2.
You will not be able to master lightning until you have dealt with the turmoil inside you.
What turmoil?
Zuko, you must let go of your feelings of shame if you want your anger to go away.
But I don't feel any shame at all. I'm as proud as ever.
Prince Zuko, pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame.
Wow, I love that. You know, it's so crazy. As soon as he said that, I'm trying to remember. I'm not ashamed at all. My pride is as high as ever. I had that exact thought pop into my head, and I was like, "Are those two on the opposite ends of the spectrum?" And so I was laughing to myself when he came back with that retort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the line, pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source.
Yeah.
True humility is the only antidote to shame. I love that because I also think it ties into a discussion we had previously, which was like, there is like this expectation that in order to avoid shame, you have to maintain this image of like perfection and proud, and you have to be totally 100% confident and always move forward, that you have no flaws, and that you're flawless, and that you're the best person for the job in all instances. Although I'm not really sure, to be honest, where the line between like pride and confidence lies. But that's a discussion for another time. But I think, um, you know, I think it is really an astute observation that from being overly proud comes shame.
Yeah.
And only when you embrace humility is when you can get rid of shame, right? When you can um, be humble and be okay with your shortcomings and accept that you are mortal, right? You're just mortal, and flawlessness and perfection are never really going to be attainable. And uh, when you accept that fact and accept that it's okay to make mistakes and be flawed, then you can get rid of that shame that comes when you don't perform or you don't obtain the goal or the end that you're trying for. Um, and I think we forget that a lot. That if you want to get rid of those feelings of shame, you have to accept. It's not to convince yourself that um, it's not to eliminate all of the wrongs and think that everything you do is correct and right and proud of that. It's to accept that what you do may be flawed and wrong at sometimes, and you may make mistakes, but that's okay. And so I thought I really, when I heard that for the first time, thought it was a really astute observation. I still think it's a really astute observation, and I try to keep that in my mind a lot, but I would say I forget it sometimes, um, and it's hard, but I think it is really important.
Yeah, that's a really great quote. Um, that's a really good quote. I think first of all, I love when you can pull really good quotes like that out of animated or young audience pieces of work in general. I appreciate that thoroughly. But yeah, I think you. I don't have a lot more to say. I think that and I think it's one of those situations where it kind of depends on how you define terms. And I struggle with that sometimes. Like if I'm not even necessarily debating somebody, but just conversing with somebody about a powerful quote, a powerful line, whatever the case, like yeah, we can define different terms in different ways, interpret different words in different ways, but at the end of the day, these words mean something, and um, I think that quote is. I certainly agree with it. Obviously, other people could, have a different interpretation, but I think that's a pretty universally recognizable and agreeable quote, and it's one that I think is very powerful and astute. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Hmm. And also, like, I think just to tie this into a little bit more like modern culture, right? We we do have kind of this particularly on social media and stuff, this like culture of like you have to portray perfection at all times. And you have to portray, you know, like complete flawlessness and sunshine and roses all the time. Uh, and I think it's interesting because while that happens, depression levels are at an all-time high among our generation. And I think there is a strong correlation between, the need and the expectation of portraying flawlessness and perfection at all points, and depression and shame, uh, and anxiety, um, because when you're forced and to or you convince yourself that you need to do that, it really does make everything that doesn't go your way or every mistake seem like the world is falling. And so I think it is important to remember for people, especially in our generation, like um, mistakes and flaws and shortcomings are inherent and part of our human nature. And the cure to depression is not to eliminate those mistakes, but to be okay with them and embrace them and recognize that that's part of you, and that's perfectly okay. It's more than okay.
Conveniently, it's not an incredibly pertinent segue into my number 2, but it is very, very relatable. So yeah.
All right. Well, what is
cool to hear? So look, it's gonna happen, whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, deal with it. We're getting another addition, I should say, from Mr. SquarePants himself. Like I said, it's gonna happen. It is. There's nothing you can do about it. But play the clip. This is technically cheating because I subconsciously lumped this in with TV when it is in fact not, and I would be remiss if I didn't make that distinction. This is from the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, top 5 movie of all time. But I did subconsciously lump it in with the rest of the show, which I could argue is fine, but potentially not. So I apologize for that. Without further ado, my number 2.
I just quickly, I think it is okay because the movie appeared in the TV show.
I appreciate that.
So I think it's okay.
Thank you.
All hail
SpongeBob, what happened?
Plankton cheated.
Cheated? Hold on there, Baldy. Oh, grow up. What, you think this is a game of kickball on the playground? You never had a chance to defeat me, fool! And you know why?
Because you cheated?
No, not because I cheated, because I'm an evil genius. And you're just a kid. A stupid kid.
I guess you're right, Plankton. I am just a kid.
Of course I'm right. Okay, Neptune, time to kill.
And you know, I've been through a lot in the past 6 days, 5 minutes, 27.5 seconds. And if I've learned anything during that time, it's that you are who you are.
That's right. Okay, Neptune.
And no amount of mermaid magic, or managerial promotion, or some other third thing can make me anything more than what I really am inside. A kid.
That's great. Now get back against the wall.
But that's okay!
What? What's going on?
'Cause I did what everyone said a kid couldn't do. I made it to Shell City, and I beat the Cyclops, and I rode the Hasselhoff, and I brought the crown back!
All right, we get the point.
So yeah, I'm a kid, and I'm also a goofball, and a wingnut, and a knucklehead McSpazzatron!
What's going on here?
But most of all, I'm...
Hey, settle down. Take it easy. What the scallop?
I'm a goofy goober!
Oh no!
Well, first, if you want to watch the whole clip, first of all, there's a reason it has 100 million views on YouTube. But the rest of the song is phenomenal. But it's first of all, I cried when I saw that for the first time. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember watching the movie early one morning before anybody else was up.
TV show.
Pardon me. Excellent piece of work. And if you're not familiar, I don't want to spoil too much, but the whole arc of the story is that SpongeBob doesn't get a promotion at work because he is labeled as a kid. And obviously, like I said, I don't want to dig too deeply here, but what I really love about this speech, and I don't even know if I could single out an individual quote, but what I really love is that he spends the entire course of the movie trying to essentially prove to others and to himself that he's not a kid. And what I love about that speech is that I think he realizes, astutely so, that rather than trying to be somebody that he's not, he embraces it and pushes and expands the limits of what a kid can do. And I think that's very important, and it's something that is applicable to a lot of areas of life where, I feel like if there's a trait or a truth about you that you don't have control over, your age, your height, right? If I'm 5'11", right? I'm not going to be a big man in the NBA, but I can push the boundaries and the limits of what that entails, right? If I'm a kid, I can't change that. But what I can do is I can push the boundaries and the limits of what a kid is able to do. And so I think that rather than running from things that you can't control or trying to change them if you can't, or dwelling on them, I think SpongeBob reminds us here that that doesn't necessarily mean you can't accomplish things that you couldn't. Were you different? Were you taller? Were you bigger? Were you older? But you can, and you can, like I said, expand the boundaries and the limits of what's possible for somebody of that nature. So yeah, it's personally, I mean, I'll remember that quote or that scene for a very, very long time. And I love it. And I think that there's a lot more meaning in it than I had initially, thought when I watched it at age 7 or whatever I was. But also, I just noticed this for the first time watching that just a minute ago. I love that Plankton says "grow up" at the beginning before he embarks on the speech. I didn't realize or recognize that, but I think that's really fitting and pertinent as well. So
I think SpongeBob is the personification of the line, like can't is never was is like the word can't was never in SpongeBob's vocabulary.
yeah,
For him,
100%.
there was always, he was always going to. It was never a thing. Like he was never ashamed of failing, but he was never not going to try.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
and I think, yeah, he is the embodiment of the kid that never stops dreaming.
100%.
And I think it's really well. I know we plan on talking about this more in the future, but I think it is really sad. And I'm like, you said you cried the first time you saw this. Like it's really sad when you see, the transition when you kind of stop becoming a kid and that dream of endless possibilities and the capacity to think that you can, you know, do anything, as long as you keep on going and put your mind to it and really try hard. And the idea that your possibilities are really endless. It's really sad when I think you see that go away in people, particularly when they reach adulthood. Because I think very much the essence of being a kid is believing in the endless possibilities of your life. Um, and I think when that goes away, it's a really sad moment. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
100%.
on that happy note,
Number
because
one.
it is like,
Oh, excuse
it. I mean, I was just thinking, like, when you're a kid, you don't know if you're gonna be, you know, 6'11" or 5'5", or you don't know what the hell is gonna happen to you, right? And it doesn't matter to you, you know. You're not thinking, oh man, um,
me.
I
Yeah.
want, you're not like when you're thinking, sitting there watching, you know, um, I don't know, uh, like the kids out there now watching Aaron Judge hit, home runs, right? They're not sitting there going, oh man, I can never do that, because I'm not 6'7", or whatever. They're just seeing him doing it and loving it. It's like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, another thing is they may not do exactly what he does, verbatim, but
Yeah.
there's something about the essence of dreaming about what Aaron Judge does, and there's a temptation to say that be yourself, don't copy somebody else, but I also think that kid of dreaming, oh, I want to do that. A kid who maybe grows up to be 5'11" or 5'5" or 5'7", and sees Aaron Judge do that and says, I want to do that. If they do make it like that and do go out and keep dreaming, ultimately they are going to do it, but in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be like, I'm going to do exactly what Aaron Judge does, but I'm going to keep dreaming about doing that and do it in my own authentic way.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to remember that, just because you can't do exactly what somebody else does doesn't mean you can't keep that dream alive. And doing it in your own way is, I think, just as impressive, if not more impressive, I would argue, than doing what somebody else has done.
100%. And actually, it's interesting you say that. I grew up playing alongside Yankees shortstop Anthony Volpe. We were teammates for pretty much our whole childhoods, and it's been kind of a surreal experience watching him, knowing that he's a kid that I kind of grew up with, and obviously just a regular person, right, from my perspective. And hearing stories, we know the family pretty well, and hearing stories from them about all the other guys on the team, and you come to realize like these are just regular people. And I think I've had a realization, like the real difference between the people you see on TV and other people that you don't, that have a similar level of talent, is that those guys or girls are the ones that believed in themselves, the ones that believed that they could do it, and the ones that aren't up there are the ones that don't. So yeah, I think that I'm really glad you said that. I never really thought about it that way. Kids watching, things that they dream of and not really having any level of doubt in themselves, and not even conceptualizing that as a possibility of not having an opportunity to fulfill that. I really appreciate you saying that.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, it's well, I think we will talk about this a lot more later on.
Yeah, for sure.
My number one quote is kind of shifting gears a lot.
Okay.
And this is going to seem like a really odd number one quote, because it's kind of dark.
Okay.
And it's from a series that I recently just watched. It may be a top 3 series of all time in my book.
Okay.
It's called The Bear.
The Bear.
The Bear. And it's about an Italian family in Chicago who own like a family-owned restaurant. And the youngest brother, basically, not to give too many spoilers, but he becomes like the best chef in the world. Works in all these really, really fancy kitchens, and is like working in like 3-star Michelin places, etc. And then his brother dies, and his brother is like the owner of this mom and dad's like sandwich shop in Chicago, and his brother leaves him this restaurant, and this guy has always dreamed about throughout his childhood of turning this restaurant into like a high-end, really special place. That's been his dream, to work with his brother and turn this place into something special. So he really cares about it. It means a lot to him. And and he hasn't really dealt with the pain of his brother leaving. His brother dying, but he really wants to turn this restaurant into something special. And so he goes about it, and he's in the process of opening this restaurant. It's really nice. It's really fancy, and it's in his the place that his mom and dad and brother built. And it's opening night of the restaurant, and he has a lot of psychological turmoil. He's in a relationship for the very first time, and things are starting to look up for him. And then he makes a mistake and fucks up, and is basically locked in the fridge, the walk-in fridge of the restaurant, and the door handle comes out because he didn't call the guy to fix it, so he's stuck there. And so he's in the fridge, walk-in fridge, reflecting on things. And he doesn't know it, but his girlfriend is listening in on the other side of the fridge. And so I'll play the clip. It's like I said, it's dark, and I don't really know why this is my number one, except that I have just found myself like gravitating. It's one of these quotes where I just find myself gravitating toward it and repeating it over and over again, and so I had to put it number one because it's been like I can't get rid of it. I guess is what I mean. So yeah, I'm just gonna play it. Like I said, it's dark. It's not a lot of good coming out of this quote, but I think sometimes it's important to talk about the darker issues. So let's get into it.
What the fuck was I thinking? Like I was gonna be in a relationship? I'm a fucking psycho. That's why I'm good at what I do. That's how I operate. I am the best because I didn't have any of this fucking bullshit, right? I could focus and I could concentrate and I had a routine and I had fucking cell reception. I don't need to provide amusement or enjoyment. I don't need to receive any amusement or enjoyment. I'm completely fine with that. Because no amount of good is worth how terrible this feels. It's just a complete waste of fucking time.
I'm really sorry you feel that way, Connor.
Claire? 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 Claire?
All right, so the quote that I pulled out is, I don't need to provide amusement and enjoyment. I don't need to receive any amusement and enjoyment. And I'm completely fine with that. And like I said, it may seem like an odd choice, but this is something that I think I struggle with a lot. Is and this is why I relate to this character a lot, is I have a really hard time, I think, uh, embracing the good that comes into my life. Um, like it's almost like in some sense, it's like when something is going your way and looking up and things are really looking good, there's almost like this expectation that it's too good. And that, it's only a matter of time before things, um, turn the other way, and and things, fall in your face and hit you in the face, and things go terribly, and it's in a catastrophe. And there's been points when like I'm kind of have that bliss. I don't know. I would say is like that feeling that you know things are great, and my life is in such a good position, and then something related to goals that I have, uh, maybe work related, it may be sports related, it may be school related, um, but something that I really care about, I take my foot off the gas, and something bad happens in that area, and I have like the same thought of like, you know, what the fuck was I thinking? Like thinking that I could like have fun and then also devote a ton of time and be, you know, the best, and really make progress in this other project that I really care about. Um, I think I fall into the trap sometimes of thinking like, if you want to be like, if you want to really work hard and achieve something great, it can't be fun. It can't be like, oh, I'm having this great time, and in the process, um, it should be painful. It should be, tough, and it should entail a ton of sacrifice, uh, where all you're doing is just work, 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 work. And if, you know, the others kind of more leisure, enjoyable stuff and time, that's good takes away from that, um, then like there's a serious problem. And so it's a problem that I think that I struggle with personally. Um, is like in embracing the amusement and enjoyment is what he says. And yeah, I don't know. This is an awkward, I guess, quote to bring up at this time, because it is like a very personal thing. And I don't, it's not something that you like talk about a lot with other people. Like, we're like, yeah, um, I have a lot of trouble like embracing the good. Um, but I think, yeah, it's weird. Like it's almost like if you're enjoying life, then you're not like, the feeling to me is, if I'm enjoying life, then I'm not really that serious about the work that I'm doing and the things that I'm trying to accomplish. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think that certainly hits him in the face in that scene. Um, yeah, not much else to say
Yeah,
about that.
it's first of all, it's a great monologue. As an actor, they're tough to find. I'm gonna look into that one. But yeah, I mean, I think I certainly disagree with that premise, and I think you do too at your core. But it's you know, I think I've realized this over the last couple of years as I've kind of embarked on, career paths. People who are really, really successful at things, they have to love what they're doing. They have to. There's no alternative, in my opinion. I see everybody, when I go to the gym, right? I see everybody there, and it's like there's this mantra, right? That it's like it's work, it's a grind. You have to like get yourself to go, and it's like no pain, no gain. It's like everybody there likes being there. Everybody there is satisfied with their workout. Everybody there, it's part of their daily routine or whatever, weekly routine, whatever the case. There's nobody that goes to the gym on a consistent basis that hates it, right? And I think that's very contrary to our perception of the gym and work in general, right? Like there are very few people, if any, who are really successful at something that don't love what they do. And I think like as an actor, let's say, I'm in all kinds of acting classes at school or and otherwise, right? And you can tell by somebody's performance how passionate they were about their preparation, about the performance itself, and how much fun they're having doing it, right? It's very easy to see when somebody is fighting themselves in their preparation or even in the moment to accomplish something, right? And on the contrary, conversely, it's very easy to tell when somebody is genuinely throwing him or herself into it, with the desire and with joy, And I think alternatively, I said this in part one when we were doing the movies, but I find it very, very, very difficult to completely waste time.
Yeah.
And if there is a moment where I'm doing something that's quote unquote unproductive, at least how I define that in the moment, a lot of times I have a realization like, whatever I'm doing it for a reason. And that reason, and I make mistakes with my time, right? I certainly don't spend my time perfectly. And I look back and I try to fix that. But if you're doing something, right, that is not productive towards one of the things that you have predetermined is something that you want to accomplish, that doesn't mean you're not making progress in that area or another, right? If I'm at home, I have 10 things to do and I take half an hour and I'm laying in bed watching YouTube, there's a pretty good chance that I'm getting something out of that, right?
Yeah.
And enjoyment in and of itself is one of those things. And enjoyment is not, I think a lot of people separate enjoyment, like you were saying, from everything else that they have to do in their lives, that he or she has to do in his or her life. And it's not, because joy and happiness and enjoyment protrudes through, and I think makes all of those things not only easier but better, even if it's not necessarily associated with the task that you're looking to accomplish. I think if you're sitting at home doing something fun and it's making you happy, like I said yesterday, patience is progress. And I think that you're subliminally progressing in many countless areas, whether you believe it or not, or recognize it or not. So,
well, I appreciate that. I want to say a couple things. The first is, I think it's not necessarily like about the activity necessarily, like going from like work to like activity that's enjoyable. I think it's more about the mindset of like, okay, I'm just supposed to enjoy this, like for the sake of enjoying. Uh, where I think that is the thing that is like the tough thing is like, okay, this is just supposed to be enjoyable. And I think I always, I feel like, oh, I need to get something out of this. There needs to be a purpose. There needs to be something that I'm doing. And then the other thing I want to say is um the line that I didn't highlight, which is like he says um like what the fuck was I doing? I'm a fucking psycho. That's why I'm good at what I do. That's why I'm, the best at what I do. Um I think that's related in a lot of respects for me because I think I have this idea in me that like in order to be really good at something, you need to um you need to do go outside of the norm. You know, like I think the times when I've like really felt good about my accomplishments and done something that like I really look back and I'm like, man, I nailed that. It's also times when I put myself through like a lot of misery, and I'm like barely sleeping, not really eating, not spending any time with like friends, just head down and like it's miserable. But it's like some part of me thinks like, okay, that's the way it's supposed to be, and you have to be like psychotic. Anyway, I certainly give off that look sometimes,
Really?
but like that's how you reach your goal, and that's how you obtain, the best possible thing. And I think there is like a struggle, internal struggle of like, how do I, just be like the average, the average person, but like exist in this world as like, you know, do the things that a young person is supposed to do and have fun and enjoy life and let it come to you. And at the same time, like foot on the gas at all times. And not let a moment slip. And I think that's where I struggle. It's like in my mind, it should like, foot on the gas 100%. And anytime I find my foot like off the gas, it's like get really mad at myself. And so yeah, I think. I don't think we should dwell on this too much, but
Yeah, that's fine, and I'm happy. I think my number one is a really good way to close because it is very, very touching. I think it's a good transition and a good ending, especially after, like you said, a little bit of a more somber note. So,
yeah, all right.
if you're done with your analysis,
Yeah,
I'm ready.
my personal psychotherapy.
Yeah.
All right, I'll play this. Um, okay.
Oh,
Is
by
it?
the way, I forgot to mention. So I sent you a little bit of a fuller clip.
Oh,
I
you
just
did.
sent it to you. Yeah, because
From
here's the thing. I mean, we're at the end. I cut it down a little bit, but since it's the last one, it's only like half a minute longer. But
okay.
there were some notes in there that I wanted to get in, and since it's the last one, it's 3 minutes long. But I figured
All
why
right.
not? So
Give
I
me.
would ask you and the viewers to just kick back and stick with it for the 3 minutes. It's a
You
really
send it
touching
to me via text.
via WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. All right. You ready?
I am. So this is a scene from Young Sheldon, the precursor sequel or prequel to The Big Bang Theory. It's a really really great show, and been watching it with my parents, and yeah, I really like this scene a lot. It hits me on a lot of on a lot of personal levels, and I think emotional levels as well. So without further ado.
Can I sit with you?
I think Mommy needs to be alone right now.
All right. Mom, I'm scared.
Why?
You didn't go to church. You stopped saying grace. I don't understand what's going on.
It's kind of hard to explain.
Is it me? Did I do something wrong?
Of course not. Come here. Sheldon. Faith means believing in something you can't know for sure is real. And right now, I am struggling with that.
So you don't believe in God anymore?
That isn't something for you to worry about. I need to figure this out myself.
Can I help? Maybe I could provide a fresh perspective.
I don't think so, baby.
Did you know that if gravity were slightly more powerful, the universe would collapse into a ball?
I did not.
Also, if gravity were slightly less powerful, the universe would fly apart and there'd be no stars or planets.
Where are you going with this, Sheldon?
It's just that gravity is precisely as strong as it needs to be. And if the ratio of the electromagnetic force to the strong force wasn't 1%, life wouldn't exist. What are the odds that would happen all by itself?
Why are you trying to convince me to believe in God? You don't believe in God.
I don't, but the precision of the universe at least makes it logical to conclude there's a creator.
Baby, I appreciate what you're trying to do. But logic is here. And my problem is here.
Well, there are 5 billion people on this planet, and you're the perfect mom for me. What are the odds of that?
Thank you, Lord, for this little boy.
I knew I could fix it.
Maybe it was you and the Lord.
I don't like sharing credit, but I knew in that moment it wasn't the appropriate time to say it.
Yeah, that's I'm really glad you played that.
Yeah, I love that scene. And I, as a highly religious person, I've talked about the existence of God with many people, some who agree with me and some who don't. And I think what that scene reminds me is that there's a lot of scientific evidence that supports the existence of God. There's a lot of scientific evidence that doesn't. And I think on both sides, you could argue until the cows come home and not really get to a definitive conclusion. And I think his second attempt on a much more personal level, when he says, and this is my quote, there are 5 billion people on this planet and you're the perfect mom for me. What are the odds of that? It reminds me that it's those human examples that are way more important. And I think there are a lot of very, very undeniable elements of life that make it really difficult to explain life without God. Why we feel love, why we like music, right? Why we're emotionally motivated to help other people, and why it makes us feel good when others are happy, right? Things of that nature that I could throw out countless scientific and logical examples that support that argument, but it's those human ones that I think are almost impossible, if not impossible, to debate. And I think that it's something that I certainly live by. And Jesus, I'm paraphrasing again, I apologize, but there's a verse in the Bible that essentially says, we can interpret, the clouds in the sky, right? We can walk outside basically and tell that it's going to rain before it does, right? We don't need a weatherman to tell us that. And I think that's entirely true, right? We have feelings and we have emotions that, are a lot more dependable, I think, than our brains are in a lot of instances. And I like also when she says that logic is up here and my problem is here. And I think what that reminds me is that logic, I think is often seen as a precursor to emotions and decisions. And I kind of see it in the opposite way. I think our emotions and our feelings, and our heart and our soul is the precursor to everything that we do. And I think logic can help explain that and can help um, guide that in certain ways. But I don't think it can be the driving force in the choices that we make, whether we realize that or not.
I've thought a lot about like what is like faith recently.
Mm-hmm.
When I say recently, probably for the past like 2 years.
Yeah.
And it strikes me that faith is not in believing in the things you can explain, but it's
Yeah.
believing in the things you can't explain. It's believing in the irrational. Um, like it's great to be living in a world where you try to explain everything and rationalize all things, and certainly there is a lot of attempts to do so. And there is an argument that doing so um, can also be a proof of God. But for me, I'm personally more interested in the things that we can't explain. And I think there's a common tendency to try to come up with explanations for everything
Yeah.
because we want to understand certain things. We want to understand why such and such happened, why such and such happened. And I found myself being more content with actually just letting go of trying to understand and rationalize, um, and just accept that you know they're like, because any attempt that I try to make sense of it, um, always has gaps. It always has gaps, and that's why science progresses as it does, because we're always correcting for mistakes, for gaps, explanations for things. And I think that's part of the reason I have difficulty with that I've had difficulty with like science. I would say, like, okay, that sounds bad, but like difficulty,
I
with
have difficulty with
studying
science.
like cosmological explanations and things like that, because there is always gaps and there is always the unexplained. And I get the inclination to explain, to get as close as possible to explaining everything. But I think if we take a step back and just accept that there are so many things and there's so many aspects of our life that are just irrational,
Yeah.
and that we don't have an explanation for, and that's okay, right? I think it's more okay, to more healthy to accept the irrationality of things than to try to rationalize the irrational. Um, and I think that is what faith is that believing in the irrational. Um, and and I think, a lot of times people are puzzled at when traumatic events happen, when things that occur, like horrible events happen in history, like wars, like natural disasters, etc. People always ask people who are victims of these things or have experienced them or whatever, and they're always amazed that for some reason those things strengthen the person's faith, like make them believe more in God. And part of it, I think, is you can find light at the end of the tunnel. But I think also, and I'm a strong believer that the light shines the brightest in the dark. But I also think part of it is when you have something happen that's so irrational and that you can't explain by any other, force or laws, or why is this happening? It makes no sense. Um, I think faith is accepting that there is no explanation for it. Um, but that it's happening for a reason. But that reason is undisclosed to you. And I have I have religious friends, I have non-religious friends, and who, like you said, have a tendency to go logic route when it comes to believing in God and try to make all the arguments and try to prove it rationally. And I don't think that's possible. And I don't think that's definitive. And I don't think that is faith. Like I said, I think faith is believing in the irrational and accepting the irrational.
Yeah. No,
And I think
I agree. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that I think that's what that clip really demonstrates. It's the irrational that
Yeah, it's believing in what you can't see, I
yeah.
think.
And
I
I think
love. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I'll be honest, I actually have seen that. I haven't watched Young Sheldon like in full like season wise, but I have seen some episodes, and I have seen that episode, and I think what, if I'm not mistaken, what troubles Mary, I think is the mom's name, right? What troubles her is all these things happen that like she can't explain, and that she doesn't see as like normal and the normal routine and what normally happens, and so that's what really uh burdens her faith and makes it tough and makes her question it. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and I think it's also what strengthens it is recognizing
Yeah.
the irrational.
For sure. I mean, what's interesting too is like, and this is actually another one of the episodes, but there's a line that says something to the effect, and it's true. It's like if you don't question it, are you really authentically 100% believing it, right? If you close yourself off to the possibility of anything else, and this isn't necessarily true in every circumstance, but I think questioning it strengthens your belief in many ways. Yeah, for sure. I think that I personally do not feel it at all like I have to be able to prove something to think that it's true. I think a lot of people, especially as our society becomes more scientifically um, productive and more scientifically successful, feels the need to prove something to consider it fact, or not even fact, but a belief that somebody has. And I don't agree. I mean, there's plenty of things that I believe in that I can't necessarily explain, and or even come close to explaining, or even would ever attempt to explain. And while I think obviously our scientific advancements are incredibly powerful and incredibly useful, 99% of scientific discovery over the course of history has been proven to be incorrect. So you look back on all the things that we used to think were scientific fact, and now we laugh at some of the discoveries that we made, and I just wonder in 100 years what we're going to think of what we think today, right? So, and this isn't supposed to be an anti-scientific point, but like you just said, like you kind of corrected yourself. You're like, oh, that sounds bad. Like I don't want to say that I'm opposed to science, but I think that's so ingrained in our society now that if you don't believe in proof and fact, that you're not doing your due diligence, right? And I don't think that's necessarily the case, like you said. And I particularly like how his first attempt, to go the scientific and logical route doesn't really do much for Mary. And like I said, it's the human side of it, the human attempt, that is more powerful and more successful in what he's trying to do, but as from the audience's perspective, is so much more powerful and so much more emotional, and so much more captivating from a from a literary, or not literary, from a cinematic perspective.
Respect.
So yeah, I think it's a really good scene.
It's just like one more note on the like the rationality thing. A lot of people I know and I've heard experiences about people who aren't religious and don't like believe in God ordinarily, don't have like really never believed in God. Um, the points when they're pushed to prayer is when something happens or something occurs where they have no more tools in their toolkit to solve the problem. That's when people are pushed to prayer, pushed to asking God.
Right.
When the tools of rationality are no longer there. And I think accepting, recognizing when that happens, when you're out of tools, is a really important part of life. And I think if there is a role for God in a state and in politics and in society, it's for the moments where you do not have tools. And it's I think it is really important. What separates a good leader from a bad leader, what separates a good decision maker from a bad decision maker, is recognizing when you don't have tools to solve the issue, when you don't have the means, when things are out of your control, right? It's deliberating about when you actually have the means to make something better and alleviate it and fix it, and when you don't. And I think, um, I mean, we could talk about all kinds of biblical things related to like irrationality and seventh day and whatever. But I think for those who don't believe and or are trying to believe or are curious but not quite there, even those who are struggling to reaffirm their faith, I would say, you know, look towards the things, look towards the irrational, things you can't explain, and be content with leaving your explanation at faith.
Yeah, for sure.
And on that note, Tristan, we have conquered all 20 quotes, 10 movies, 10 TV.
We certainly
This
have.
this was like, I don't know if you can see on the recording, but we're at 2 hours and 6 minutes. So we're coming up on 4 hours total, which is quite impressive.
It is. It certainly is.
And I think it's only fair that I give you some time right now to talk about your show, talk about your plans, talk about what you have going on, and give everybody who is the loyal people who have made it to the end a chance to find more of you. And by the way, as you know, always welcome on the show, and the invitation is always there to talk more. But I understand you have stuff going on and you got your own show. So how can those who have been mesmerized by your performance check out your show and tell them a little bit about it?
Well, before I engage and embark upon any of that, I just want to say how much I appreciate you having me on. This was certainly a fruitful and exciting discussion. And thank you to everybody else who tuned in. And like Athens said, stuck it out to the end. Much more to come. I think we have some pretty exciting plans. You and I, and obviously the show at large. I'm sure you have all kinds of stuff laid out and mapped out. But to be continued. I think we can certainly glean a lot from this and embark on future and external discussions as well. So thank you for having me on. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And
Thank you.
yes, I'm not going to I'm not gonna hold you guys. It's 2:36 in the morning, and where I am, then like Athen said, we're pretty deep into it at this point. But yes, I do have a YouTube channel called Tee It Up Golf, just the letter T. It is a golf entertainment channel. It's a lot of fun.
Really quick, it's T dash it dash up golf, right?
On Instagram, it's there's a period in between. It's T period it period up
Okay.
period golf, and then on YouTube it's just spaces in between. So it's just Tee
Spaces.
It Up
Okay.
golf.
T it.
Yeah. So the YouTube is
Link,
the primary
link in the
outlet.
description, guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the YouTube is the primary platform, and we have an Instagram as well. Check that out. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I come from an acting and golf background, and I kind of slam the two into each other and put out a pretty comedic and exciting golf entertainment product. So if you're interested in golf or being entertained in any way, I highly recommend it, and I appreciate you giving it a shot.
Well, listen, I watched it. I'm not a golf person or fan, but I watched it I watched golf for the first time, and I really
There we
enjoyed it, and I
there
had
we
a good
go.
time. So if you like golf, you know, obviously, you're doing a disservice to yourself if you don't check it out, subscribe, and stay tuned. But if you don't like golf, I still highly recommend that you check it out.
Absolutely.
And listen, Tristan, I'm in the birthplace of golf right now.
I was just gonna say that you guys across the pond, man, you guys started it all.
Yeah.
What are you? How far are you from St. Andrews?
I'm about an hour from St. Andrews. But there's a course like literally a 3-minute walk from my flat here. And then
Really?
yeah, like a nice course. And then there's another course, more like a links, I guess.
Yeah.
That's like right near the main campus. So you see people practicing. So, I think it's only fair that we arrange a special edition of Tee It Up in Scotland.
100%. I would love to.
Um,
Absolutely.
and we can go up to St. Andrews and do a very well known and famous episode on that famous golf course. So
Absolutely. I would love to.
I think yeah. I mean, a lot of my audience is in Edinburgh, in Scotland. A decent amount of Scots listen, so definitely, golf is this is a strong target audience, I would say. Golf is
Absolutely.
what people live by, and it's what they breathe in Scotland. So
It certainly is. I've actually never been to the UK, but it's on my bucket list. I mean, for many reasons. But
obviously,
yeah,
number one is because I'm here.
clearly, obviously, just cut that out. I don't think that's just a waste of everybody's time. We're at 2 hours and 12 minutes, and you're throwing that at
Garbage.
me.
Yeah, yeah.
Obvious, but yeah, it certainly is the home of golf and the birthplace of golf, and yeah. So if you're at all interested, I highly recommend it. And I don't want to hold you guys, like I said, although I already have. But this was a lot of fun. I really I appreciate this this part one and part two, and I'm excited for what's to come.
Yeah, yeah. This was look. We covered so many topics,
We
and
did. I was just thinking this today. I'm happy that we didn't get any crossover. We didn't, no, neither of us, or I should say, we didn't have any repeat shows. I mean, I did and you did individually, but we had a really eclectic and diverse mix of topics and quotes. So yeah,
absolutely.
I certainly
And
agree.
it's kind of incredible, like how movies and TV and just arts in general can move you toward philosophical and insightful discussion in all aspects of life. And I think we really hit on everything. So I mean, you guys know this because if you're listening to this part, you're at the end and you've watched all of it, so you know that we've covered everything. Although we didn't, there is. I should be careful because we covered everything, but we have a lot more space to go into depth. I would say we've opened a lot of doors, and laid it all out there. But the next step is we got to really, really, really dig in.
Hunker down, for sure.
Hunker down. So I hope we've provided you some amusement and enjoyment. To quote my last quote. Amusement and enjoyment is good. It is good. And I also hope we've provided you a lot of insightful takes and give you something to think about. And as I said at the beginning, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was a ripple that has made an impact on your life. And you know what? Let us know in the comments, either on the website, www.theathenianoshow.com, or on the YouTube channel or on the Spotify, what your top 5 movie quotes and what your top 5 TV show quotes are. We would love to hear that. Love to get different perspectives. Love to hear, if you have any criticisms, bring them. If you have any compliments, bring them. If you have any questions, bring them. We want to hear your thoughts. And as I said, Tristan, your bio will be up soon on the website. So
appreciate it.
Yeah. So anyway, I think there's nothing left to do but say adios, goodbye, farewell, adieu, all those things.
Farewell.
Farewell. All right. Thank you, guys.